Welcome viewers to a thought-provoking video on a somber chapter in history. Today we shed light on the tragic reality of African black slaves becoming breeding farms. This dark and often overlooked aspect of the transatlantic slave trade reveals the depths of human suffering and the dehumanizing treatment inflicted upon African men and women. Join us as we explore this painful topic and seek to understand its historical significance and long-lasting impact. To understand the sad reality of African black slaves becoming breeding farms, we must first grasp the broader context of the transatlantic slave trade. This brutal system involved the forced transportation of millions of Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to work on plantations and in other industries. European powers and traders captured Africans from various regions of the continent, predominantly West Africa, and transported them under horrific conditions to the Americas. Once enslaved, Africans endured unimaginable suffering, loss of freedom, and separation from their families and homelands. The transatlantic slave trade was driven by economic motives, as plantation owners sought to maximize their profits by exploiting the labor of enslaved Africans. This dehumanizing system treated individuals as commodities, reducing their worth to mere objects for labor and trade. Within this already horrific system, the practice of turning enslaved African women into breeding farms further exemplified the depth of cruelty and objectification. This practice aimed to increase the slave population and ensure a steady supply of labor for the plantations. The breeding farm system involved the systematic exploitation of enslaved African women for the purpose of producing more enslaved individuals. Let's delve into the details of this distressing reality. Enslaved African women of childbearing age were forced to bear children under oppressive conditions. Their reproductive abilities were seen as a valuable asset for plantation owners, as the children born into slavery became their property and a source of future labor. Enslaved women were subjected to sexual exploitation and abuse, often at the hands of the white slaveholders or overseers. Their reproductive choices were taken away, and they were treated as objects solely for breeding purposes, devoid of autonomy or basic human rights. The children born from these forced unions were often separated from their mothers at an early age, adding another layer of pain and trauma to an already harrowing existence. The emotional and psychological toll on these enslaved women cannot be overstated. The breeding farm system was driven by economic incentives and a desire for control over the enslaved population. Let's explore the factors that perpetuated this disturbing practice. Slaveholders viewed enslaved individuals as valuable property, and the ability to produce children increased their wealth and power. More enslaved individuals meant a larger workforce, which translated into greater profits for the plantation owners. By controlling the reproduction of enslaved African women, slaveholders sought to exert dominance and maintain a constant supply of labor for their plantations. This control over reproduction extended to decisions about forced pairings, restrictions on contraception, and the separation of families. The breeding farm system was also influenced by the legal and social structures of the time. Slaveholders, supported by prevailing racist ideologies, saw African black slaves as inferior and thus justified their dehumanizing treatment, including the exploitation of women's reproductive capabilities. The breeding farm system inflicted severe physical and emotional consequences on enslaved African women. Let's delve into the lasting impacts of this deeply traumatic experience. Enslaved women endured the physical toll of repeated pregnancies and childbirth without proper medical care or support. They faced high rates of maternal mortality, complications from childbirth, and inadequate postpartum care, exacerbating their already challenging circumstances. The emotional trauma inflicted upon enslaved women cannot be underestimated. They experienced the anguish of having their children forcibly taken away, sold, or even subjected to further exploitation. The constant fear of separation and the inability to protect their own offspring took a devastating toll on their mental well-being. The long-lasting psychological impact of the breeding farm system extended beyond the individual women. The loss of familial bonds, the perpetual cycle of violence, and the degradation of the humanity created generational trauma that continues to affect African diaspora communities to this day. Amidst the despair and dehumanization, enslaved African women and men demonstrated incredible resilience and resistance against the breeding farm system. Their stories of resistance serve as a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Enslaved women found ways to defy the system by engaging in acts of sabotage, quietly resisting forced pairings, and preserving their cultural practices and traditions. These acts of resistance represented small victories within an oppressive reality. The enslaved community also forged bonds of support and solidarity, offering emotional and physical assistance during childbirth and parenting. They created makeshift families, providing love and protection for one another in the face of unimaginable cruelty. The strength and resilience of these individuals lay the foundation for further resistance movements and the fight for liberation. Their stories served as a testament to the power of resilience and the refusal to be dehumanized, even in the most brutal of circumstances. The legacy of African black slaves becoming breeding farms continues to reverberate through history and has left an indelible mark on the African diaspora. Let's explore some of the long-lasting impacts and challenges stemming from this sad reality. The systematic dehumanization and objectification of enslaved African women through the breeding farm system perpetuated harmful stereotypes and contributed to the deep-rooted racism and sexism that persist in society today. It reinforced the notion of black bodies as commodities and perpetuated the notion of white superiority. The separation of families and the disruption of kinship ties had profound consequences for African diaspora communities. The loss of cultural heritage, the erasure of ancestral connections, and the ongoing struggle to trace family roots have created a unique set of challenges in terms of identity and belonging. The generational trauma resulting from the breeding farm system continues to impact the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of African diaspora communities. Healing from this deep-seated trauma requires acknowledgement, support, and efforts to address the systemic injustices that continue to perpetuate inequality. It's crucial to acknowledge and confront the sad reality of African black slaves becoming breeding farms. Education and awareness play a vital role in understanding this dark chapter of history and working towards a more just and equitable future. Education systems and curricula should also include accurate and comprehensive information about the breeding farm system and its impact on enslaved African women. By teaching this history, we ensure that the future generations have a deeper understanding of the complexities of slavery and its lasting effects. Acknowledgement of this painful history involved recognizing the resilience, strength, and contributions of enslaved African men and women. By highlighting their stories of resistance, we honor their agency and resilience, challenging the narrative of victimhood and acknowledging their humanity. Public memorials, museums, and cultural institutions should provide spaces for reflection and remembrance, ensuring that the stories of those affected by the breeding farm system are preserved and shared. These spaces can foster dialogue, healing, and a deeper understanding of the historical and ongoing impacts of slavery. Confronting the sad reality of African black slaves becoming breeding farms requires a commitment to social justice and dismantling the systems of oppression that persist today. Let's explore the ways in which we can work towards a more equitable and just society. Advocacy and activism are essential in challenging the systemic racism and inequalities that continue to perpetuate the legacies of slavery. By raising awareness, engaging in dialogue, and supporting organizations working towards racial justice, we can actively contribute to positive change. Supporting initiatives that empower marginalized communities, promote education, and provide resources for healing and restoration is crucial. This includes supporting organizations that work to address intergenerational trauma, provide mental health support, and promote economic opportunities for African diaspora communities. It's also important to address the intersections of gender, race, and class in our pursuit of social justice. Recognizing the specific experiences and challenges faced by enslaved African women and advocating for gender equality within broader movements for justice are integral to creating a more inclusive society. Remembering and honoring the victims of the breeding farm system is an act of justice and remembrance. Let's explore the ways in which we can pay tribute to their resilience and ensure that their stories are never forgotten. Commemorative events, memorials, and ceremonies can serve as powerful reminders of the lives lost and the strength of those who endured. These acts of remembrance create spaces for healing, reflection, and collective acknowledgement of the historical injustices inflicted upon African black slaves. Promoting research and scholarship on the breeding farm system is crucial in uncovering hidden narratives and expanding our understanding of this tragic reality. By supporting academic endeavors and encouraging the inclusion of diverse perspectives, we can further illuminate this chapter of history. Amplifying the voices and stories of African diaspora communities is an essential part of remembering and honoring those affected by the breeding farm system. By listening to their lived experiences and elevating their narratives, we can challenge historical erasure and ensure their stories are given the recognition they deserve. As we conclude our exploration of the sad reality of African black slaves becoming breeding farms, we must reflect on the profound injustices endured by enslaved African men and women. Understanding this dark chapter of history is essential for healing, reconciliation, and actively working towards a more equitable future. We've examined the transatlantic slave trade, the breeding farm system, and the lasting impacts on African diaspora communities. We've acknowledged the physical and emotional consequences, the legacy of generational trauma, and the importance of education, acknowledgement, and commitment to social justice. Moving forward, let's remember and honor the victims of the breeding farm system by actively engaging in efforts to dismantle systems of oppression and inequality. By amplifying marginalized voices, supporting initiatives for healing and restoration, and advocating for a just society, we can contribute to the ongoing struggle for equality and justice. Together, let's build a future where the sad reality of African black slaves becoming breeding farms is acknowledged, understood, and used as a catalyst for transformative change. May our collective efforts pave the way for a more inclusive and compassionate world where the dignity and worth of every individual are recognized and celebrated. Thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration and reflection. Let's continue to learn, listen, and work towards a future free from injustices of the past together.